The emergency alarms echoed through the council chamber. Crix pressed his many-fingered hands against the control panel, his insect-like eyes reflecting the red warning lights. On the massive screen before him, another star system blinked out. Gone. Consumed. That made 12 systems in 3 months. "They're getting faster," Crix said, his voice trembling. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 7 different species watched in silence. No one wanted to say what they were all thinking. They were losing this war. The Void Swarm had appeared without warning from the darkness between galaxies. At first, the Council thought they could negotiate. They always negotiated. For 3,000 years, peace had been maintained through words, not weapons. But the Swarm didn't want to talk. They only wanted to consume. High Marshal Draven stood from his seat, his feathers ruffling with agitation. "Our fleets retreat again. We cannot hold them. They do not fight with honor. They do not follow the rules of engagement." "Perhaps," Crix said quietly, "we need to stop following rules they do not know." The chamber fell silent. No one in living memory had suggested such a thing. War had rules, limits, boundaries. That was what separated civilized species from monsters. "There is one option," an old counselor said from the shadows. Her name was Vera, and she was ancient even by her species' long standards. The archives speak of them, the Silent Ones. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Silent Ones, a myth, a legend whispered in old texts and children's stories, a species that had vanished 500 years ago, leaving behind only ruins and questions. "They called themselves humans," Vera continued. "They lived on a world called Earth, blue skies, water oceans. The archives say they were different. They fought wars not for honor but for survival. They built weapons that frightened even themselves." "Fairy tales," Draven said dismissively. "Even if they existed once, they are gone. Their world is empty. We sent probes centuries ago." "But their distress beacon still exists," Vera said. She moved to the central console and pulled up an ancient file. "Before they vanished, they left this. A call for help, meant to reach across the galaxy. No one ever answered it because everyone assumed they were extinct." Crix studied the beacon's coordinates. "You suggest we activate it? Call out to ghosts?" "We are dying," Vera said simply. "What harm can it do to try?" The vote was close, but desperation won. 3 hours later, the ancient human beacon activated, sending its signal into the void. Most council members did not expect an answer. They prepared for their final stand instead. Far across the galaxy, hidden in a debris field surrounding a dying red star, the signal arrived. The human remnant fleet had made this place their home for 200 years. 47 ships, clustered together like a metal city in the darkness. Inside the flagship, Indomitable, alarms began to sound. Captain Yuna Kim was in the training bay when the call came. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much loss. She was drilling her pilots on evasive maneuvers when her communicator buzzed. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge. Now!" Yuna ran through the corridors, her boots clanging on metal floors. The Indomitable was old, patched together from salvaged parts and desperation. Like all the human ships, it had been built not for glory, but for survival. On the bridge, Admiral Taewon Park stood before the main screen. He was 52, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands from decades of repair work. Beside him stood Counselor Mira Han, the youngest of the human leadership at 29. She was their historian, the keeper of memories from Earth. "Tell me that's real," Yuna said, staring at the signal on the screen. "It's real," Mira said, her voice shaking. "It's a distress call, using the old frequencies. Someone found our beacon." "Or it's a trap," said Commander Hyan Lee, the head of security. He was a stocky man of 38, always suspicious, always careful. We've stayed hidden for 500 years. Suddenly someone calls and we just appear? Admiral Taiwan was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the star charts, at the direction of the signal. It came from the old council sectors, the civilizations that had existed when humans first reached for the stars. "Play the message," he said finally. The recording was brief, a desperate voice explaining the void swarm, the losses, the extinction facing the council species, and then a simple plea. "If anyone hears this, please. We need help." The bridge was silent when it ended. Yuna felt something stir in her chest. It was anger, or maybe it was hope. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. "We can't go," Hyun said firmly. "We have 50,000 people left, that's all. If we lose the fleet, humanity dies forever." "If we hide forever, are we really living?" Yuna asked quietly. "She's right," Mira said. "We've been running for 5 centuries. Our children are born in these ships. They've never seen a real sky, never stood on real ground. What are we surviving for if we never actually live?" Admiral Taiwan looked at each of them. Then he called for a council session. For 3 hours, the leaders of the human remnant argued. Some wanted to ignore the signal. Some wanted to send scouts first. Some wanted to run even farther away. But in the end, it was the young people who decided. The pilots, the engineers, the soldiers who had been born in the fleet. They voted almost unanimously. They would answer the call. "Humanity survived because we helped each other," said Lieutenant Hana Yoon, a pilot barely 24 years old. "My grandmother told me stories about Earth, how people from different nations came together when disaster struck. Maybe we're meant to do that again, just bigger this time." Admiral Taiwan made his decision. "Prepare the fleet for jump. Navigation, set course for council space. Tactical, ready all weapons systems. Engineering, I want every ship at full capacity." "How many ships are we sending?" Hyun asked. "All of them," Taiwan said. "If we're doing this, we do it right. Humanity answers the call." Yuna felt her heart pound. This was insane. Reckless. They were risking everything, but as she looked around the bridge, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. She saw purpose. "Captain Yuna," the Admiral said, "you'll take Indomitable ahead as scout. Get there first. Make contact. Show them we're real." Yuna saluted. "Yes, sir. When do I leave?" 2 hours. The rest of the fleet will follow 6 hours behind you." As Yuna left to prepare her ship, she passed Dr. Sora Choi in the corridor. Sora was the fleet's xenobiologist, 31 years old and brilliant. She had studied every alien species in the human archives. "We're really doing this?" Sora asked. "We're really doing this," Yuna confirmed. "Good," Sora said with a small smile. "It's about time the galaxy learned that humans aren't just legends. We're survivors, and we don't leave people behind." 2 hours later, the Indomitable broke from the debris field and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind it, the rest of humanity's fleet began preparations to follow. In council space, the void swarm continued its advance. High Marshal Drevin prepared for a final stand at the fortress world of Kavara Prime. He did not expect the beacon to work. He did not believe in ancient myths. But far in the distance, crossing the galaxy at impossible speed, Captain Yuna Kim smiled grimly and checked her weapons systems one more time. The Silent Ones were silent no more. The fortress world of Kavara Prime had never seen so many warships in one place. Thousands of vessels from the 7 council species formed defensive rings around the planet. On the surface, billions of civilians huddled in underground shelters, praying to their various gods for salvation. High Marshal Drevin stood in the command center, his wings tucked tight against his body in the way his species showed stress. The holographic displays showed nothing but bad news. The Void Swarm was 2 days away, and their numbers kept growing. 3 million ships, maybe more. His scouts stopped counting after a while. What was the point? "Sir, we have an unidentified contact," a sensor officer called out. "Single ship. Just appeared at the system's edge." Draven's head snapped up. "Swarm." "No, sir. Different signature. It's broadcasting on the old human frequencies." The command center went quiet. Everyone turned to look at Draven. The human frequencies, the beacon they had activated 3 days ago. No one had actually expected an answer. "Put it on screen," Draven ordered, his voice careful. The ship that appeared on the display was unlike anything in the Council database. It was smaller than most Council warships, but it looked dense, compact, built for function rather than beauty. Scars marked its hull, patches welded over old damage. This was a ship that had seen battles. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She had dark hair, dark eyes, and an expression that was completely calm despite dropping into a war zone. Behind her, the bridge of her ship hummed with activity. "This is Captain Una Kim of the Human Remnant Fleet ship Indomitable," she said in perfectly clear Council standard language. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the command center exploded into noise. Humans were real. They existed. They had come. Draven pushed through the chaos to the communication station. "This is High Marshal Draven, Supreme Commander of Council Forces. Captain Kim, your arrival is unexpected. We believed your species extinct." "We get that a lot," Una said with a slight smile. "We've been keeping a low profile. Your message said something about an invasion?" Draven felt frustration rise in his chest. One ship. They sent one ship. "Captain, we face the Void Swarm. 3 million vessels. They consume everything. We have prepared for our final stand here, but I do not expect victory. I appreciate your gesture, but one ship cannot change this battle." "I'm not here to change the battle, Marshal," Una said calmly. "I'm here to scout. The rest of our fleet is 6 hours behind me." "How many ships?" Draven asked, allowing himself a small hope. 47 warships, 20,000 Marines, about 4,000 fighters." Draven's hope died. That's your entire fleet?" "That's what's left of humanity," Una said simply. "We've learned to make it count. Now, can you send me your tactical data on the swarm? I'd like to see how they fight." Draven wanted to laugh. Or maybe cry. These humans had crossed the galaxy to help, and they brought barely enough ships to matter. But he transmitted the data anyway. What else could he do? On the Indomitable, Una studied the battle recordings with her senior staff. Commander Hyun Lee, her security chief, watched over her shoulder. Next to him, Dr. Sora Choi analyzed the biological data on the swarm. "They're not very smart individually," Sora said. "The drones are simple. They rely on overwhelming numbers and fear tactics." "The Council fights in formation," Hyun observed. "Orderly, predictable. The swarm just swarms them." "Chaos versus order." Una nodded slowly. "They've never seen real asymmetric warfare. Look at this. The swarm doesn't adapt. They just keep using the same mass charge tactics." "So what do?" Hyun asked. "We show the Marshal what humans do best," Una said. "We improvise." She opened a channel back to Draven. "Marshal, I see you have a swarm scout fleet in the outer system. 300 ships." "Yes," Draven said. "We've been avoiding them. Our models suggest engaging them would cost us at least 100 ships. I'd like your permission to engage them." Draven stared at her. "Captain, you have one ship." "Then I'll be quick about it. Do I have permission?" Draven looked around his command center. His officers looked back at him with expressions of disbelief. Finally, he made a decision. If the humans wanted to throw away their ship, at least the Council would learn something about the swarm from watching. "Permission granted. We'll observe." What happened next would be talked about in Council military academies for generations. The Indomitable accelerated toward the swarm scout fleet. 300 swarm ships detected her and turned as one mass, preparing to overwhelm this single target. Council sensors tracked every moment. But Yuna didn't charge straight in. Instead, she dove toward a nearby asteroid field. The swarm followed, their ships bunching up as they pursued. That was their first mistake. Now, Yuna said calmly. The Indomitable had been seeding the asteroid field with mines as it passed through. Dozens of explosions tore through the pursuing swarm ships. The formation broke apart in confusion. Before they could regroup, Yuna's ship unleashed weapons the Council had never seen. Railguns fired solid slugs at a fraction of light speed, punching through swarm vessels like paper. Missiles with electronic warfare packages hacked into the swarm's communication network, sending false signals. Half the swarm fleet turned on the other half, thinking they were enemies. Yuna used the chaos. The Indomitable was fast, faster than it looked. It darted between asteroids, using them for cover, never staying in one place. Swarm ships fired wildly, often hitting each other. "Deploy the drones," Yuna ordered. Small attack drones launched from the Indomitable, each one autonomous, each one carrying enough explosives to cripple a swarm ship. They moved like a school of fish, unpredictable, coordinated. The swarm's targeting systems couldn't keep up. In the Council Command Center, officers watched in stunned silence. This wasn't how battles were fought. There was no honor here, no formal engagement, just brutal, efficient destruction. Lieutenant Hana Yoon, Yuna's best pilot, flew her fighter in patterns that made the Council sensors think there were 3 ships instead of 1. She led a group of swarm vessels into a trap, then vanished before they could retaliate. 38 minutes after the engagement began, it was over. 300 swarm ships destroyed. The Indomitable had minor damage to its shields. 0 casualties. Yuna opened the channel to Draven again. "Marshal, the scout fleet has been eliminated. I'm sending you our tactical data. Your people might find it useful." Draven couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, he found his voice. "Captain Kim, how did you do that?" "We fight to survive, Marshal. We don't have the luxury of fighting for honor. When you're facing extinction, you learn to use every advantage. Deception, misdirection, speed, fear. The swarm uses terror as a weapon. So do we." "Your ships," Draven said slowly. "They're not like ours." "No," Yuna agreed. "We build for war, not for show. Every weapon, every system, every piece of armor exists to keep us alive and kill what's trying to kill us. 500 years of running and hiding taught us that." A new alarm sounded. The main swarm fleet had changed course. They were accelerating toward Kavara Prime. The battle was coming early. "Captain," Draven said urgently, "the main swarm is moving. They'll be here in 30 hours. Can your fleet arrive in time?" Yuna checked her displays. "We'll be here in 5 hours, Marshal. Start preparing your forces. When Admiral Tae-Wan arrives, we're going to need everyone working together." "What should we do until then?" "Survive," Yuna said simply, "and watch what we do. Because we're going to teach you how to fight a war when losing means extinction." The Indomitable took up position near Kavara Prime's orbital defenses. Yuna knew the next 5 hours would be tense, but she also knew something else. Somewhere behind her, 46 more ships were racing across space. Ships carrying the last remnants of humanity. Ships carrying Marines who had trained their entire lives for combat. Ships carrying weapons and tactics the galaxy had forgotten. In the command center, Counselor Mira Han was already preparing the diplomatic groundwork. She knew that after this battle, humanity would need allies. They couldn't survive alone anymore. Dr. Sora transmitted her analysis of the swarm biology to every Council science vessel in the system. If humanity fell, at least the knowledge would survive. And far in the rear, Colonel Doyen Kang briefed his Marines. 20,000 soldiers who had never set foot on a real planet, who had been born in ships, who knew only one truth: when the galaxy called for help, humans answered. The 5 hours passed slowly, and then, like a storm breaking, the human remnant fleet arrived. 47 ships, against 3 million. High Marshal Dreven looked at the numbers and felt despair. But Admiral Taiwan's first transmission changed everything. "Marshal Dreven, this is Admiral Taiwan Park. We're ready to fight. Now let's show this swarm what happens when they threaten our galaxy." Our galaxy, Dreven thought. They already think of it as theirs. These strange, violent, wonderful humans who crossed the stars to help strangers. Maybe, he thought, legends existed for a reason. Admiral Taiwan stood in the council war room, surrounded by military leaders from 7 different species. They stared at him like he was a ghost made flesh. High Marshal Dreven had insisted on this meeting before the battle began. The council needed to understand who had come to help them. 47 ships, said General Cross, a reptilian commander with scales that shifted colors based on emotion. Right now, those scales showed deep blue. Fear. "Admiral, we appreciate your courage, but the swarm brings 3 million vessels. The mathematics are not favorable." "Mathematics change when you change how you fight," Taiwan said calmly. He activated a hologram showing the swarm's approach vector. "You fight like war is a game with rules. Formation here, honor there. Retreat at acceptable casualty percentages." "That is how civilized species conduct warfare," Dreven said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "We don't have that luxury," Taiwan said. "When Earth fell, we had 2 choices: die with honor or live by doing whatever it took. We chose to live." He pulled up footage from Yuna's engagement with the scout fleet. "This is what war looks like when extinction is the alternative." The council officers watched in silence. They saw the tricks, the traps, the complete absence of mercy or honor. They saw efficiency. They saw survival. "You want us to fight like this?" Cross asked, his scales flickering with uncertainty. "No," Taiwan said. "I want you to learn from us while we fight like this. Your strength is different. You have numbers. You have production capacity. You have worlds and populations. We'll teach you new tactics, but first, we win this battle." Commander Hyun Lee stepped forward. He had been silent until now, studying the council officers. "We need you to understand something. We're not heroes. We're not saviors. We're just people who've gotten very good at not dying. If that makes you uncomfortable, we don't care. We're here to win." Dreven looked at these strange humans. They were smaller than most council species. No natural armor, no claws or fangs. They wore simple uniforms and carried weapons that looked utilitarian rather than decorative. But there was something in their eyes, something hard and determined. "What do you need from us?" Dreven asked. "3 things, Taiwan said. "First, give us tactical command of the battle. Your people follow our orders. Second, don't question our methods during combat. Trust us. Third, be ready to learn fast." The council officers looked at each other. This was unprecedented, giving command to an unknown species. But what choice did they have? "Done," Dreven said. "What's your plan?" Taiwan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We make them think they're winning. Then we show them they're wrong." 4 hours later, the Void Swarm arrived at Kavara Prime. 3 million ships emerged from faster-than-light travel like a plague of locusts. They formed a wall of vessels so thick they blocked out the stars. On the human flagship, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Hana watched the scanners. She was young, only 24, but she had trained for this her entire life. "Sir, they're not even trying to be tactical, just brute force mass advance." "Good," Taiwan said. "Means they haven't adapted. Captain Yuna, begin Phase 1. Yuna's voice came through the comm. "Copy that. All human ships, scatter formation. Make them chase us." The 47 human ships broke apart, each one speeding in a different direction. The swarm, programmed to pursue and overwhelm, split up to follow them. Thousands of swarm vessels chased each human ship. "Council forces, hold position," Taiwan ordered. "Wait for my signal." Draven watched as the humans led massive portions of the swarm fleet on wild chases through the system. The human ships were fast and maneuverable. They used planets for gravity assists, dove through debris fields, and employed every trick possible. The swarm followed, growing more spread out with each passing minute. "They're dividing the enemy," Cross said with sudden understanding. "Breaking up their numerical advantage." "Now they're learning," Hyun said with satisfaction. Down on Kavara Prime, Colonel Doyun Kang prepared his Marines. 20,000 soldiers in powered armor, carrying weapons designed for maximum damage. They waited in dropships, ready to deploy if the swarm reached the surface. "You think we'll see action?" asked Sergeant Nari Im, the unit's chief medic. She was 27, calm under pressure, and had saved more lives than anyone else in the fleet. "Hope not," Doyen said honestly. "If they reach the surface, things have gone very wrong." But he prepared anyway. That's what humans did. They prepared for the worst and fought to prevent it. In orbit, the battle was becoming chaotic. The swarm had split into thousands of smaller groups, each chasing a human ship, and that's when Taiwan sprung the trap. "All human ships, turn and engage. Council forces, attack the divided groups. Focus fire." Suddenly, the hunters became the hunted. Human ships stopped running and started fighting. Each one unleashed weapons the swarm had never encountered. Railguns tore through swarm vessels. Plasma torpedoes melted their organic hulls. Electronic warfare systems hacked into their coordination networks and crashed them. And the Council forces, no longer facing an overwhelming mass, found they could fight effectively. They had numbers and firepower. When the swarm wasn't a unified wall of ships, Council weapons worked just fine. "Concentrate fire on Grid 7, Yuna called out. "Hana, take your squadron through the gap." Lieutenant Hana led 12 fighters through the chaos. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, dodging swarm fire, weaving between explosions. Her squadron followed in perfect formation. They reached a cluster of swarm command ships and fired everything they had. The command ships exploded. Without coordination, the nearby swarm vessels began firing randomly, hitting each other as often as they hit enemies. "This is amazing," breathed a Council pilot on an open channel. "They're destroying themselves." "Stay focused," Taiwan snapped. "This is just the first wave." He was right. The swarm adapted slowly, but it did adapt. New command ships moved forward. The mass began to reorganize, but the humans had bought them time and weakened the enemy significantly. Dr. Sora worked frantically in her lab, analyzing swarm debris that scouts had collected. She found something important. "Admiral, I'm sending you data now. The swarm has a biological weakness. They use organic components in their ship hulls. Certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation disrupt them." "Can we weaponize it?" Taiwan asked. "Give me 2 hours." "You have 1. Sora and engineer Junho Shin worked together, redesigning human EMP weapons to target the specific frequency. Junho was 42, had built half the weapons on the fleet, and could modify anything in record time. "This is insane," Junho muttered as he rewired a pulse cannon. "We're doing in 1 hour what should take a week." "Welcome to humanity," Sora said with a grim smile. "We specialize in insane." They finished in 53 minutes, the modified EMP weapons deployed across the human fleet. When they fired at the swarm, entire groups of enemy ships simply died, their organic components fried by the radiation. "It's working," Yuna reported. "They're falling apart." But the swarm wasn't done. From the rear of their fleet, larger vessels emerged. These were different, bigger, better armored. They moved with more intelligence. "Command ships," Hyun identified. "They're adapting faster than we thought." One of the massive command ships fired at a human destroyer. The beam weapon punched through the shields like they weren't there. The destroyer exploded, taking 90 crew members with it. Tae-Wan felt the loss like a physical blow. 90 people. That was 90 out of their remaining 50,000. Every loss hurt more when your species was dying. "All ships, priority target those command vessels," he ordered. "If we don't stop them, they'll tear us apart." The battle intensified. Council and human forces coordinated their attacks, learning to work together on the fly. A human ship would weaken a target with electronic warfare, then Council heavy cruisers would finish it with their powerful beam weapons. Drevin found himself actually enjoying the combat. This was real warfare. Messy. Brutal, but effective. The humans had shown them that survival mattered more than honor. Bryn, a council engineer, worked alongside Junho to keep the weapons running. "Your species is crazy," Bryn said, his reptilian hands moving to keep up with Junho's pace. "Crazy keeps us alive," Junho replied, not looking up from his work. After 8 hours of continuous combat, the swarm began to retreat, not because they were defeated, but to regroup. They had lost perhaps a quarter of their forces, but so had the defenders. Tae-Wan looked at the casualty reports. 5 human ships destroyed. 12 severely damaged. 3,000 humans dead. The Council had lost hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of crew, but they had won. For now. "This was just a probe," Yuna said over the command channel. "They were testing us." "I know," Tae-Wan said. "And now they know we can hurt them. They'll come back with a better plan." Sora appeared on screen looking exhausted. "I found something else, Admiral. The swarm has a central intelligence, a primary node that coordinates everything. If we destroy it, the rest might fall apart." "Where is it?" Draven asked, joining the conversation. "Deep in their territory," Sora said. "Protected by millions of drones, it would be suicide to attack it." The command channel was quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. Finally, Yuna spoke up. "Then we make it worthwhile suicide. We hit them where they don't expect it. We take a strike team straight to their heart." "I'll lead it," Tae-Wan said immediately. "No, sir," Yuna said firmly. "You're needed here to command the defense. I'll take the team." Tae-Wan wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He looked at this young captain who had become one of humanity's best warriors through necessity and training. "Pick your team," he said quietly, "and come back alive. That's an order." Yuna nodded. "I'll do my best, sir." As the defenders prepared for the next assault, everyone understood. The real battle was just beginning. And humanity had shown the galaxy something important. Legends could bleed, but they could also fight back. Captain Yuna stood in the briefing room, looking at the 12 people who had volunteered for what everyone was calling a suicide mission. 9 humans and 3 council volunteers. That was the entire strike team, 13 people against the heart of the swarm. "I want to be clear," Yuna said, her voice steady. "Our chances of survival are low. We're going deep into enemy territory, to a command vessel the size of a small moon, surrounded by millions of swarm ships. If anyone wants to back out, do it now. No shame in it." Nobody moved. Commander Hyun crossed his arms. "You're stuck with us, Captain." The team included some of humanity's best. Hyun, the security chief who never trusted anything. Sergeant Nari Im, the medic who could patch you up in the middle of a firefight. Pilot Minho Bae, who could fly through anything. Dr. Sora, because they needed someone who understood swarm biology. The 3 council volunteers were just as determined. Bryn, the engineer who had worked with Junho, stood with his scales showing bright orange. Determination. Next to him were 2 council soldiers who had lost their entire units in the first battle. They wanted revenge. "Our window is small," Yuna continued, pulling up a hologram. In 6 hours, Admiral Taiwan will launch a major assault on the swarm's front lines. Every ship we have will attack at once. It will be loud, obvious, impossible to ignore. And while they're distracted, we slip through, Hyun finished. Classic misdirection. Exactly. Pilot Minho will get us through their lines in a stealth corvette. Once we're close to the command vessel, we go in quiet. Plant charges on the primary neural core. Get out. Detonate. What if we can't get out? One of the council soldiers asked. Yuna met his eyes. Then we detonate anyway. This isn't about survival. It's about stopping them. The room was quiet. Everyone understood. This was the kind of mission where you made your peace with the universe before you started. Get some rest, Yuna said. We leave in 4 hours. Check your gear. Say your goodbyes. The team dispersed. Yuna found herself walking through the ship's corridors, looking at the faces of the crew. So many young people. Born in these ships, never knowing Earth. They deserved better than a life of constant running. She found Mira in the observation deck, staring at Kavara Prime below. The counselor looked tired. You don't have to do this, Mira said without turning. We could find another way. There is no other way, Yuna replied. You know that. If we don't take out their central command, they'll keep coming. Forever. I know. Mira finally looked at her. I just hate that we always have to be the ones who sacrifice. 500 years of running. Now we sacrifice more. Maybe that's what makes us human, Yuna said quietly. We survive, and we protect others, even when it costs us everything. 4 hours later, the strike team loaded into the stealth corvette Whisper. It was a small ship, built for infiltration rather than combat. Minho ran through the pre-flight checks with the calm of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Everyone strapped in? He called back. This is going to be a rough ride. That was an understatement. As the main assault began, the Whisper launched, using the chaos as cover. Minho flew like he was dancing, weaving between explosions and debris. His hands moved over the controls with absolute precision. Swarm Patrol, 3 o'clock, Hyun called out from the sensor station. I see them, Minho said calmly. He adjusted course, sliding the Whisper behind a destroyed swarm ship, using it as a shield. The patrol passed without detecting them. For 3 hours they played this deadly game. Every moment they expected to be discovered. Every moment Minho found a way through. He used debris fields. He matched the Whisper's speed to swarm supply vessels. He even flew through the exhaust plume of a swarm destroyer, where their sensors couldn't penetrate. You're insane, Bryn said with something like admiration. Completely insane. Comes with being human, Minho replied with a quick grin. Then his face went serious. There it is. The swarm command vessel appeared on their screens. It was massive beyond comprehension. Biomechanical architecture covered its surface. Organic tendrils connected different sections. It looked alive because parts of it were alive. This was Valen Prime's flagship, and it pulsed with a sickly light. Docking port, lower hemisphere, Sora said, studying the scans. Looks like a maintenance entrance. Should be less guarded. Minho brought the Whisper in slowly, using the command vessel's own bulk to hide from sensors. He set the ship down in what looked like a service bay with a gentle thump. We're in. Powering down to minimal systems. If they scan for us, we'll look like debris. The team suited up in combat armor. Yuna checked her weapon, a compact rifle that could punch through almost anything. Hyun distributed the explosive charges, enough to crack a moon in half. Remember, Yuna said, we go quiet. No shooting unless absolutely necessary. Nari, stay in the center of formation. If someone gets hurt, we need you alive. They exited the Whisper into a nightmare. The interior of the command vessel was wrong. Organic walls pulsed with something like breathing. Acid dripped from the ceiling. Strange sounds echoed in the darkness. This wasn't a ship built by machines. This was something grown. "Stay close," Hyun whispered. He took point, his weapon ready. They moved through the corridors like ghosts. Twice they hid in side passages as swarm drones passed by. The drones were horrifying up close. Part insect, part machine, with too many legs and weapons where eyes should be. "How far to the central core?" Yuna asked Sora. 2 kilometers, straight down." Sora was studying a portable scanner. "But there's something else. I'm picking up massive biosigns. Something big is ahead." They found a shaft leading downward. No ladders. Just a vertical tunnel with walls covered in something slick and organic. Minho fired a grappling line and they descended one by one. Halfway down, they were attacked. A swarm guardian drone, bigger than the others, dropped from above. Its weapons fired acid. One of the council soldiers screamed as the acid hit his armor. He fell, disappearing into the darkness below. Hyun fired back, his rifle punching holes in the guardian, but more were coming. The team's stealth was over. "Run!" Yuna ordered. "Get to the core!" They ran through the twisting passages, fighting as they went. More guardians appeared. Bryn took a hit to his shoulder but kept moving. Nari grabbed him, injecting him with combat stimulants to keep him going. "Left here!" Sora called out. They burst through a membrane-like door into a massive chamber. The neural core filled the entire space. It was a pulsing, writhing mass of organic tissue and technology. Cables thick as tree trunks connected it to every part of the ship, and at its center, a consciousness waited. A voice filled their minds. Not sound, something deeper, more invasive. "The Silent Ones, we remember, we consumed your Earth. Your cities screamed as we fed." Yuna felt her teeth clench. She forced words out. "You made a mistake. You taught us to survive. You are broken, scattered, a species dying. You cannot stop us. Watch us," Hyun growled. He and the team spread out, planting charges on the neural core. The organic tissue tried to resist, growing tendrils to stop them, but they cut them away. More guardians poured into the chamber. The team formed a defensive circle around Nari and Sora. They fired continuously. One of the human soldiers went down, then another, but they kept fighting. "Charge is set," Hyun called out. "We need to move." They ran back the way they came. Behind them, alarms began to sound. The entire ship knew they were there now. Swarm forces converged from every direction. Minho reached the Whisper first and got the engines ready. The others piled in, some carrying wounded. Nari worked on Bryn's injuries even as the ship shook from impacts. "Everyone in?" Minho shouted. "Go," Yuna ordered. "Hyun, arm the charges. 30-second delay." The Whisper lifted off as swarm forces flooded the bay. Minho pushed the engines to maximum. They blasted through a hangar door, tearing metal and flesh. Outside, thousands of swarm ships were turning toward them. "They're locking weapons," Hyun said calmly. He held the detonator. 20 seconds. "Can we make it?" Bryn asked, his scales pale with blood loss. "We're about to find out," Minho said. He flew like never before, dodging fire from all directions. The Whisper's shields were failing. Hull breaches appeared. 10 seconds, Hyun counted. They cleared the immediate ships, but more were coming. So many more. 5 seconds. Yuna gripped her seat. Around her, the team did the same. They had done it. Whatever happened now, they had done it. "Detonating," Hyun said, and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the command vessel exploded. Not a normal explosion. This was something fundamental. The neural core ruptured, and with it, the connection to millions of swarm ships. The shockwave caught the Whisper, sending it tumbling. Minho fought the controls, trying to stabilize. Through the windows, they saw the swarm fleet around them suddenly going dark. Ships drifted. Some collided with each other. The coordination that made them deadly was gone. "It worked," Sora breathed. "We actually did it." "Not yet," Minho grunted. "Still need to get home. and the engines are damaged. The Whisper limped through space, running on emergency power. Behind them, the swarm fleet was in chaos, but ahead, the main battle still raged. "This is Captain Yuna to Admiral Taiwan," Yuna transmitted. "Mission accomplished. Valen Prime is destroyed. The swarm is fractured." Taiwan's voice came back, filled with relief and disbelief. "Confirmed, Captain. We're seeing it. They're falling apart. All forces, general assault." "Hit them now." The strike team watched from their damaged ship as the Council and human forces tore into the disorganized swarm. Without their central intelligence, the drones were just machines. Dangerous, but beatable. "We did it," one of the surviving team members said, tears in his eyes. "We actually won!" Yuna looked at her team. 9 had gone in, 6 were coming back, 3 humans and 1 Council soldier dead. But they had broken the swarm. "Get us home, Minho," she said quietly. "Yes, ma'am," the pilot replied. As the Whisper headed back to Kavara Prime, Yuna closed her eyes. They had paid a terrible price. But sometimes, survival demanded sacrifice. That's what made humans dangerous. They understood that truth better than anyone. The battle ended 3 days after Valen Prime fell. Without their central intelligence, the swarm fractured into mindless fragments. Some ships kept fighting on instinct. Others simply drifted in space, their purpose gone. The Council and human forces systematically destroyed what remained. Admiral Taiwan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the final cleanup operations. Around Kavara Prime, work crews were already repairing damaged stations. Medical ships tended to the wounded, and on the planet below, billions of people emerged from shelters to see the sun again. "Final casualty report, Admiral," Commander Hyun said, his voice heavy. He had aged 10 years in the past week. Taiwan read the numbers. The human fleet had lost 14 ships, 8,000 people dead. From a population of only 50,000, that was devastating. They had lost 16% of their entire species. The Council had lost more in absolute numbers, but humanity's wounds cut deeper. Every human death was felt across the entire fleet. There were no strangers among them. Everyone knew someone who had died. "Make sure every name is recorded," Taiwan said quietly. "They deserve to be remembered." "Already done, sir," Hyun replied. "Dr. Sora is working with Council historians. Every fallen human and Council member will be honored." Captain Yuna entered the bridge. She had spent the last 2 days in medical, recovering from injuries sustained during the infiltration mission. Her left arm was in a regenerative cast, and she moved carefully. "Captain," Taiwan said, "you should be resting." "I've rested enough, sir," Yuna replied. She looked at the planet below. "The Council wants to meet with us. All of us. They're calling it a formal recognition ceremony." Taiwan sighed. "Politics. Even after a war." "Not politics this time," Yuna said. "Gratitude. And they want to offer us something." 2 hours later, the entire human command staff stood in the Grand Council chamber on Kavara Prime. It was the first time any of them had set foot on an actual planet in generations. The gravity felt strange. The air smelled different. Lieutenant Hana kept looking up at the real sky visible through the dome, tears in her eyes. High Marshal Draven stood before them, his wings spread in the formal gesture of respect. Around the chamber, representatives from all 7 Council species waited in silence. "People of Earth," Draven began, "for 3,000 years we believed you were myth, legend, a cautionary tale about a species that reached too far. We were wrong. You are very real, and you saved us all." He gestured to a massive display showing casualty numbers, battle footage, and the final destruction of the swarm command vessel. "You fought with courage we have never witnessed. You sacrificed without hesitation. You brought tactics and weapons we did not understand. But you also brought something more important. You brought hope. Counselor Mira stepped forward from the human delegation. She had been chosen to speak for humanity. At 29, she was young for a diplomat, but she carried the weight of her people's history. Marshal Dreven, council members, Mira said, her voice clear. We did not come here seeking reward. We came because we heard a distress call, and we remembered what it was like to face extinction alone. We came because some things are worth fighting for, even when you're outnumbered and outgunned. Which is why, Draven continued, the Council wishes to offer you full membership, and more. We offer you a world, any world you choose in Council space, a place to rebuild, to grow, to become more than a fleet of survivors. The human delegation was silent. A world. A real world with ground beneath their feet and sky above their heads. Children could grow up without knowing only steel corridors. They could have farms, cities, a future. Admiral Taiwan stepped forward. Marshal, we are honored, but we did not fight for rewards. Our species learned something 500 years ago. We learned that survival is not enough. You must have something to survive for. Then survive for this, said Counselor Crix, the insectoid representative. Survive to teach us. Your tactics won this war. Your willingness to adapt, to fight without honor codes, to do whatever was necessary. We need to learn these things. Not to become warriors like you, but to understand that survival sometimes requires difficult choices. Engineer Junho spoke up from the back. You want us to teach you how to fight dirty. We want you to teach us how to survive, Draven corrected. There is a difference. Dr. Sora moved forward, holding a data tablet. I've been working with your scientists, sharing everything we learned about the swarm, about their biology, their tactics, their weaknesses. If they return, or if something like them appears, you'll be ready. That's the best gift we can give. And we will share our knowledge with you, said a council scientist. Medical technology, agricultural science, shipbuilding techniques. Together, we are stronger. Bryn, the council engineer who had survived the infiltration mission, stepped into the chamber. His arm was in a sling, but his scales showed bright green. Joy. I worked alongside humans in battle. I saw things I cannot explain. How they fight when hope is gone. How they protect each other. How they never surrender. He looked at the human delegation. I want to learn more. Many of us do. The ceremony continued for hours. Medals were awarded, though Taiwan insisted every human who fought deserved recognition, not just the command staff. Names of the fallen were read aloud, both human and council. Sergeant Nari cried openly as her fellow medics were remembered. Colonel Doyen stood at attention, his jaw tight, as his Marines were honored. But the most powerful moment came at the end. Lieutenant Hana, the young pilot, was asked to say a few words about what the war had meant to her. She stood before the assembly, this young woman who had been born in a ship and had never known a real sky until today. I grew up hearing stories about Earth, about what we lost, about why we ran, but nobody ever told me that being human meant something special. They just said we survived. She looked at the council members. Fighting alongside you, I learned what it really means. Being human means we adapt. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We fight not because we're strong, but because we refuse to give up. And maybe that's why our ancestors called our world Earth. It was dirt, simple, basic. But from dirt, everything grows. The chamber erupted in applause, not just from humans, but from every species present. Later, as the delegation prepared to return to their ships, Captain Yuna found herself walking through the memorial gardens with Counselor Mira. They had chosen a world for humanity's new home, a planet with blue skies and water oceans, not unlike Earth. It would take months to prepare it, but it was theirs. Do you think we made the right choice? Mira asked. Revealing ourselves? We stayed hidden for so long. We did, Yuna said firmly. Hiding kept us alive, but it wasn't living. Now we have allies, friends, a future that's more than just running. The cost was high, Mira said softly. It always is, Yuna replied. But that's the human condition. We pay the cost because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up when others fall, then what are we surviving for? They stood in silence, looking at the memorial wall where names were still being engraved. Human names, council names, all equal in death, all honored in sacrifice. High Marshal Drevin found Admiral Tae Wan on an observation platform, staring at the stars. Admiral, I wanted to thank you personally. Before this war, I thought I understood combat. Now I realize I understood ceremony, not warfare. You'll learn, Tae Wan said, and hopefully you'll never need to use what we taught you. May I ask you something? Drevin said. Your people have suffered so much, lost so much, yet you came to help strangers. Why? Tae Wan was quiet for a long moment. Because 500 years ago, when Earth fell, some people tried to help us. Most failed, many died. But they tried. I think about them sometimes. About the ship captains who evacuated civilians knowing they wouldn't escape themselves. About the soldiers who held the line so others could run. They taught us something important. What was that? Draven asked. That humanity isn't about being strong or smart or even about surviving. It's about choosing to care, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Tae Wan looked at the Marshal. You called for help. We answered. That's what humans do. 3 months later, the first human settlers landed on their new world. They named it New Earth, though some wanted something more creative. But the name stuck. New Earth, a new beginning. The settlement was small at first. Prefabricated buildings, farms growing from synthesized soil, but children played under a real sun for the first time in their lives. People walked on ground that didn't move beneath their feet, and at night they looked up at stars that weren't filtered through ship windows. Dr. Sora established an archive, preserving everything they knew about old Earth, about human history, about the war with the swarm. Future generations would know where they came from and what they had survived. Commander Hyun trained council soldiers in human tactics, not to make them into human warriors, but to give them options, to show them that rules could be broken when survival demanded it. Engineer Junho worked with council shipwrights, designing new hybrid vessels that combined human innovation with council resources, ships that could defend and explore, and Captain Yuna took command of a joint fleet, humans and council species working together, patrolling the borders of known space, ready to respond if threats emerged. One day, Lieutenant Hana brought her a message. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Old human frequencies. From deep space. Yuna's heart jumped. Put it through. The message was weak, corrupted by time and distance, but the words were clear. This is the colony ship Horizon. We evacuated Earth 500 years ago. We've been searching other survivors. If anyone... please respond. We want to come home. Yuna looked at Hana with tears in her eyes. More humans. Out there in the void, still surviving, still hoping. Send a response, Yuna ordered. Tell them they're not alone anymore. Tell them we found a new home. Tell them humanity endures. As the message went out, traveling across the light years, Yuna thought about everything they had been through. The running, the hiding, the desperate fight for survival, and finally the choice to help others even when it seemed impossible. High Marshal Draven had been right about one thing. Humans were never legends. Legends were stories, distant and unreal. Humans were something better. They were real, flawed, stubborn, adaptable, and above all, They were survivors who chose to help others survive too. On New Earth, children played in the sun. In orbit, new ships were built. Across the galaxy, the Council species told stories about the humans who answered the call to war. But they got it wrong sometimes. They made it sound heroic and glorious. The humans who were there knew the truth. It wasn't glorious. It was hard and painful and cost them everything they could barely afford to lose. But they did it anyway, because that's what humans do. They hear a call for help, and they answer. Not because they're legends, but because they're human, and that in the end was enough.